Father, Lord, I just want to thank you for just the time that we've had together thus far. Lord, you've taught us all a lot of things throughout, Lord, our life and experience, but especially through your word. Lord, it's through your word, oh Lord, that we understand how to make sense of all of these things that we go through. So I pray, Lord, that throughout everything that we discuss, we would always go back to, Lord, your word for clarification, for instruction, and that you, O Lord, would be the one that forms our view because you're the one who really sees. There's a lot of things that we assume to see, but Lord, our eyes can deceive us, and so can our ears. And so I pray, Lord, that you would give us your eyes and your ears to see and to hear, that we, O Lord, might understand, that we, O Lord, might be able to see behind the veil the things, O Lord, that are going on in the spiritual war, that are that many of us caught in the physical world are blind to. So, Lord, we just ask for wisdom once again, for your Spirit, O Lord, to guide us as we discuss these things. And may you be glorified, is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. So, um, just a kind of a quick little add-on to the last comment that I made on the beast. This idea that humans are really in the image of God, and that when we don't behave that way, we're not acting as humans, we're acting as beasts. So, remember, I told you that Satan in chapter 3, he made himself a beast, right? He was the serpent. I think it was more of a dragon. Ellen White kind of depicts him more that way. And anyway, the punishment is that he crawls on his belly. So my guess is that he probably had legs at that time. So more of a dragon, spits fire. Every word that he says burns. But the the idea that he, as a beast, was lower than man and was trying to make man lower than himself, so that he wasn't subservient to anything, but rather would make God's creation subservient to him, can be taken throughout all of history. If you look at every single religion, every single historical religion apart from biblical religion, their gods were beasts. They worshipped beasts as gods. And not only that, if you look even throughout the Bible, the way that Satan is depicted, the way that his kingdom is depicted, it's the beast, right? We talk about the beast of Revelation. And all those that submit themselves to a beast-like power is because they're beast-like themselves, right? You can only become or attain to the highest, uh, uh, um, how do I put this? Like the highest thing that you aim for or look at. So if your God is a beast, or if the system that you are part of is a beast, then the only thing you can be is a lesser beast, because even attaining to the top of what you aspire to be is near impossible. So, anyways, that's just kind of a little addendum to that. And once again, just at some point in time, if you do want to have a Zoom call and we can do a study on Genesis 3:15, I think it would be beneficial to a lot of you to understand why we fall into a lot of the traps that we do, because every single psychological trap has its foundation in Genesis 3 and 4. So, anyways, without further ado, I want to get to a little bit more of the not just the spiritual aspect, but kind of, well, how do we engage in this? So we talked a little bit about the great controversy. If you had listened to kind of like my talks from Brazil, or some talks that I did at 3ABN, the way that, just kind of a quick summary is, I had gone there with the mindset that I'm going to be. I went to Brazil in 2013. I was waiting for the World Cup in 2014, so I went there 7 or 8 months before. We were in October of 2013. The game started in June, and I wanted to go there. I wanted to start basically a camp for kids from the favelas, which is the slums, between Rio and Sao Paulo, the two largest cities in Brazil, which are about 4 hours apart from each other. And so, if we had a place that was somewhat central, maybe 2.5 hours from each city, kind of a little bit more in the countryside, maybe we could get a group of people and get kids out of the favelas to have a summer camp during the games, and maybe a little bit before the games, so that they wouldn't be caught up in trafficking, because even the government itself believed that the number of kids to go missing during the games or leading up to the games was going to go up by 300%. And why would kids with no documentation go missing by 300% leading up to a soccer game? Well, it's easy, because they were going to be taken and shoved into motels for sex tourists. And so that was Even the government couldn't hide that fact. When we went there, the government tried to hide as much as they possibly can. That's what governments do, and so they shoved all the kids that used to be in the streets. They shoved them into the motel so that you couldn't visibly see them anymore. But the way that you would get there is you would go through a kind of like a sex tourism online check-in, and they would organize your flights, your hotel stays, your restaurants, and all the cab drivers, so that it was all part of this network, and then you would never have to have contact with anybody outside of that. So these things, once again, they're very organized. They're highly organized, and so you think of, well, within the physical realm, we can only touch one and two, maybe three, which is the whatever. How do you get to real three, four, and five? And God had to break my plan of a camp, and He taught me that just do what you can do without anybody else, and that's pray. And I'm not a prayer person. I'm a doing person. I want to build things. I want to cook things. I want to make things. I'm a very creative person. I like using my hands. And here I was where I couldn't. And I also like using my mouth. Like I'm a very quiet person, but you get me talking about something that I know a little bit about, and all of a sudden, I don't shut up. You've noticed that. And so the thing was that God wanted to basically use me in a very different way. He wanted me to put my hands in my pockets, and He wanted to keep my mouth closed. He says, I need you to stop depending on people. I need you to stop depending on your experience, thinking that you know all about human trafficking and you know what you're going to do and all that kinds of stuff. This is a re-education seminar for you, buddy. And so he stripped away all my dependencies, and basically I was just walking, and I saw somebody that was depressed, and so I didn't know what to do, and I didn't speak Portuguese, and so I just prayed for them from a distance and did it again and again, and all of a sudden I found myself 5 hours walking and praying. And I had never in my life prayed for 5 hours. Heaven forbid that I should ever pray for 5 hours, but I did. And I was like, I came back home, and I was like, all right, I get it, man. I didn't say it like that. It's a bit disrespectful, but I was thinking it. And I was like, I know what you're trying to teach me something here. And so, fine, I'll make you a deal. And so I basically dropped off everything, and I said, all I'm going to do is I'm going to walk and pray. And mind you, at this time, I didn't know how to pick out all the signs. I didn't know exactly what to look for. Yes, I had experience from Atlanta, but here's a completely different context. This is Brazil, and this is like slums, right? This is not like I drive down, what you call Fulton Industrial Boulevard in Atlanta, and I see the truck stops, I see the industrial complexes, I see the shady motel on the corner. This is all right. Okay, I know that there's prostitutes walking up and down that place. You can see them. If you just spend a little time there. But this is a very different context. Um, yes, there's a lot visible, but I also recognize that there's a lot invisible. And so I just said, okay, I know nothing. I'm coming as a blank slate. And this is where I want you guys to get encouragement as. Don't be afraid to start as a blank slate. I was starting as one with experience. Right. I already had years of counter trafficking experience and all this kinds of stuff. It had been like, 5 years worth. So I wasn't new to this. But basically God wanted to strip all of that away. And so in many ways, consider yourself in the same position that I was. You see thinking, well, I don't know anything or I don't know whatever. Okay, well, God had me not know anything when I went to do this. And through that process, he took me into favelas, and he took me into places, and he had me talking with ex Satanists and high priests of black magic religions and witches and all this kinds of stuff. And I was like, man, here it's so spiritual. Trafficking is run not by the traffickers, like the which obviously the traffickers, but not by the like the organized crime guys. These are being organized by the religions. And then we began learning things like the spells and the sacrifices and all these things and their rituals that they do them in cross streets. And so we started walking down the roads, and we started paying attention to cross streets where maybe a sacrifice might have been done. And so we began paying attention to different types of buildings. We started paying attention to road names. We began paying attention to everything. Things were no longer insignificant anymore. Things were very important. And an application to the United States is when we came back, Levi and I felt a huge desire to go to Washington, D.C. And the reason why is because as we were starting to learn the language, I was like, Washington, D.C. is full of it. and I wanted to go and I wanted to see if we could apply reading the language. And Levi and I, we walked into tons. Every single time we saw a cathedral in Brazil, we walked in it. Every time we saw a cathedral, we walked in it. We just wanted to know what was inside. And we were looking for things. And we didn't always know what things meant, but we just figured, hey, and not everything that is there means something, right? Don't assume that everything is a symbol, right? That's where people get lost. We're like, oh, a triangle, it's the Illuminati. No, it's just the Citgo sign. It's okay, right? Like, don't. Okay, there might be some influence at some level, but don't assume that every single time you see a triangle, it's the Illuminati, or every single time you see whatever. But there is intention, right? There is intention. And if here's the thing, when you see enough patterns that it ceases to be coincidence, then all of a sudden you can take it as something, okay? And that's all that you do. You don't assume that you know, and you don't like assuming is dangerous, right? You go there with a bit of caution. You just say, Lord, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on in that building. I don't know whatever, but I know that these religions and these people, they do things for a reason. Okay. So when we decided to pray for stadiums, it wasn't just like, oh, we just randomly just started to pray for stadiums because that would be a fun thing to do. No, we found out that they actually pray for events. Whenever there's a sporting event, whenever there's a concert, whenever there's something, there's people that walk around and dedicate the venues to Satan. That is a common practice for events. And so we were like, okay, well, let's do that for Jesus. So if they're going to walk around and dedicate the stadium to Satan, then let's go ahead and dedicate the stadium to God. And so we did. And so we just needed to find out what their intentions were so that we could go and combat those particular things. I never did that in the States before, but I ended up doing it in Brazil. When I came back to the States, I ended up doing it in the States. If I found out there's going to be, a Justin Bieber concert, I go pray around the Justin Bieber concert. Like, I'm just saying, I'm just making stuff up because I ended up taking, somebody asked me for a ride to Justin Bieber concert one time. I turned into a prayer ministry. Anyway, just, I worked as a personal trainer. Don't ask me, why are you taking people to a Justin Bieber concert? It was a weird thing. I didn't want to, but anyway, um, don't judge me. I didn't go in. I prayed. Okay. Um, I don't like that kind of music anyway. The the thing is, when I came back and I wanted to go to Washington D.C., let me give you an example. I wanted One of the first things that I look for is I look for cathedrals and I look for secret societies and I look for things like that. I look for statues. I look for monuments. I look for things that could have some level of significance. There's generally more intentional significance in things of value, right? It's you're more hard pressed to find them in obscure things. So I just went for the obvious things first. An obelisk is an obvious one, right? You're in Washington D.C. You have an obelisk that, if you guys find out, it's 555.5 feet tall, right? And its base is 111.1. You do the math. The Yes, exactly. Somebody said it. Now that's the height, and there's two other obelisks in the world that are the exact same dimensions, and it's the dimensions of Daniel chapter 3. It's 10 times taller than it is wide, right? So there's three places in the world that you have an obelisk that's three times as tall as it is wide, and that is the Vatican, Washington D.C., and the City of London. Not London, City of London. If you guys know anything about London, there's actually two parts to London. City of London is actually independent from London. Um, and they're autonomous regions. Washington, D.C. is autonomous from the United States. Vatican is autonomous from Italy, and City of London is autonomous from the UK. And so they're all autonomous regions, and they all have these pyramids that are 10 times as tall as they are wide. Anyway, is it a monument? I don't even know. That's a good question. Beats me. Behind you, monsieur, you have the pyramid of the Louvre. Um, you know, the like you'll find these things all over the place, right? And some of it is just historical. Like, not every place you see, like, some people were like, oh, Ellen White has an obelisk on her. Like, no, that was just common. You have when you have what you call, like, a gravestone, you only have like so many things that you can choose from. This is not everywhere you see an obelisk. It's reference to Egyptian mythology or anything like that. So the like I said, symbols are there, but don't take it beyond what it needs to be. You need to find enough patterns for it to actually be consistent. And at that time, they didn't even accept women into masonry, so that can't be true. Later on, they started the Knights of Minerva, which was a branch, but that was anyway. Just do a little bit of history, and you'll find out that a lot of these things that people bring up is just anyway. So I went to Washington D.C. and I wanted to find the. I just walked and prayed. Levi and I, we walked around Washington. And we prayed, and we always ask, Lord, just show us something, reveal to us what you want us to see. And sometimes we see things, and sometimes we don't. But we always stop on cross streets and we pray. The corners of every street, so we stop and we pray, and we walk while we pray wherever we're going. But at the corners, we stop, we look around, and we pray. That's just the way that we do things. All right. This is what we learned from the things that we noticed and the things that we've experienced in Brazil and in other places. Um, Especially because we spent a lot of time with witches and priests of candomblé, which is kind of like a voodoo religion. It's equivalent. Santaria, right? You have a combination of Catholicism and traditional African religions. Just a big mix of stuff. And so we did that, and we I wanted to find the Masonic temple in Washington D.C. because I wanted to just walk around and just whatever. Obviously, there's stuff there, and I couldn't find it on Google Maps. I couldn't find it on Google Maps. I searched Masonic temple. I searched a Masonic lodge. I searched all the variants that I could, and it just wouldn't show up on Google Maps. Maybe it does now, but it didn't then. and and I was like, well, I know it's on the same street as the White House, and there's a reason that it's on the same street as the White House. The White House and the Capitol building were used to be supposed to be on the same street, but they said that there was something wrong in the soil, so they ended up putting them on different streets. And now instead of the White House aligning with the Capitol building, it ended up aligning with the Masonic Temple. And so we are like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's a coincidence, maybe that's not. Who knows? That's not a big deal whether it is or whether it isn't. We're not there for that. We're not there to figure out history. We're there to figure out something else. So we drove down that road that the White House was on, and we chose the right direction. We got to the Masonic Temple, and so we just walked around the Masonic Temple, and we prayed for it. And I stopped on one corner, and it's just to show you. This is just observation skills. You don't have to take anything from it, but this is just the way that I do things. I stopped on the corner, and I said, Levi, I want to count the seconds on the crosswalk. So there's a main street and there's a a secondary street. And so when the crosswalk was active for the main street, it was 33 seconds. When the sidewalk was active for the side street, it was 66 seconds. I said, let's wait again. So next read 33, 66, 33, 66. Does that mean anything? Maybe it doesn't. But I know that 33 and 66 are very important to who? The Masons. Where are we? On the corner of the Masonic Lodge. So you have to understand that there's a lot you won't understand, but you also wouldn't ever pay attention to it if you weren't out and praying. And so not everything is conclusive, right? I'm not here to tell you that, but I'm saying you wouldn't even know these things if you weren't out there and paying attention to these things. And all of a sudden you become sensitive to things like this. And then as you go through years of doing this, all of a sudden things begin crossing paths. And the more paths that are crossed, the more certain you could be of certain things. And it may or may not be helpful to you, your spiritual understanding. Once again, I'm not trying to understand the darkness, but to the extent that I know that the devil works, right? Because there's some people, and this is what I want to warn you guys about. I believe in conspiracy. I do. Why? Because I read the Bible. The devil is out to get you to ruin society throughout all ages, and there's always going to be powers at play that want to screw you. That's just history. So are they going to lie? Are they going to cover things up? Are they going to give you false information? Every day, you can guarantee it. But we also live, like I said, in a world of extensive amount of information. And the best way to hide it is to overflow with so much information about it to discredit it. So the vast majority of conspiracy history you will find out there is there just to take you away from what it really is meant to be. That's the way that you always keep things hidden. You drown it in a sea of irrelevance. All right. So I don't go down that route. I combine what I see in the field with a little bit of what I read about. I don't spend hours looking at YouTube videos. I don't spend hours reading books. And the reason why is because you can get so drowned in darkness. That's the only thing that you see. And I don't care about the devil. I care about Jesus, right? At some level, I have to know how the devil works in the field that I'm in. But not everybody needs to know it to the level that I know it. So I don't need to express it to the level that I know it to everybody else. And that's the same for you. You will learn things in your life that you don't need to necessarily express to everybody else. But allow your experience, prayerfully God-led experience, to make sense of the things that you learn in other places. And this is so key, because the vast majority that we have of Bible, the vast majority of things that we have even of conspiracy theory, the problem is that they're all preached and they're taught, they're not lived. So you cannot know the Bible, how God works, and you cannot know conspiracy, how the devil works, until you experience any of those things. And most of us talk from a purely theoretical view, and I'm just bringing this out because I want us to avoid that. I want us to avoid that. Okay. What we're talking about here are things that I've experienced, things that I've seen, things that I've known, and the process by which you can learn. I don't want you to go grab a book. I don't want you to go grab a book. God will reveal things to you as you are able and as you are drawing closer to Him. He's going to show you how the devil works so that you can avoid those traps. But He's not going to cause you to ever focus on the devil. That's you. Only you will cause yourself to focus on the devil. Jesus will never do that. And so you'll confront darkness, but it will never be in a spirit of fear. It'll never be a spirit of, oh, I'm really curious. I'd like to learn more about how this darkness works. No, not necessarily. In some places you may need to, but once again, I just want to make sure that things are balanced. If you're going to learn about things, dark things, I say a minimum of 4-1. 4-1 Bible, spiritual, prayer, do what you're supposed to do, to one figuring out traps and tricks and deceptions of the devil. Any less than that, you're putting yourself on dangerous ground. Any more than that, you're putting yourself in. So just, I bring that up because what I want you to do is I want you to walk. And I want you to walk and I want you to pray and I want you to begin to look for things. And God will begin to reveal things to you. And some of it will not make sense to you at first. Don't assume things, right? It's very easy for us from a lack of knowledge to assume things. But as things progress, you will begin to see things that you haven't noticed before, things that you can't learn. So the reason that I'm giving this as an example is because I don't want to give you advice on what you should do per se, like here's your 12-step program to counter trafficking. I don't believe it exists. I don't believe it exists. What you need to do is, maybe that happened to me because I already had some experience and I don't, yeah. I want us to understand the spiritual nature before we really try to understand the physical nature. And that's been the biggest dilemma that I've had is I've met a lot of people who's like, can you teach me how to do counter trafficking? And I said, well, what I want to teach you first is how to understand the great controversy. I want to teach you how to be an intercessor, a prayer warrior first, because you're going to confront things that you cannot make sense of. You're going to confront darkness. You're going to see things. You're going to experience things that are going to mess you up. You have no idea. You have no idea how dark slavery is. You have no idea. All right? Satan is disgusting. And the types of things that people are capable of doing to other people is is mind-boggling. You would think that certain things are not possible, but you have no idea what people can do to each other. You have no idea. To say that people can treat other people like animals is nice because they treat pets better than they treat certain people. Okay? This is not a ministry for a lot of people. But everybody can pray. Everybody can intercede. You know, one of the, I don't know if I've ever shared this story, but you've heard, but this is when we were running our 24-hour call center. we had a group of people, a church, that was praying for our ministry 24 hours a day. They were praying 24 hours a day. They had a church. They decided to buy a building in downtown Atlanta in an area where they knew that human trafficking was happening. And so they went there and they had members in the church at all hours. They said, okay, you are between this hour, you're between this hours. They always had at least two members in the church praying together 24 hours a day. And they prayed for that community, that God would break down the walls of trafficking in that community. And they were praying for our ministry, which was working in Atlanta as a 24-hour call center in response to victims of human trafficking. And they did that for a year and a half before something happened. During that year and a half, there was a club that was right at the other end of the block, I believe, that would have loud blaring music. You guys know how clubs get at night, right? And so between the hours more or less of 10 and like 3 in the morning, the people that were scheduled to pray, because remember, they're praying 24 hours a day, would struggle to concentrate during their prayer. And so they said, well, we're going to scream our prayers. And so they would scream their prayers for an hour. Right? They would yell their prayers for an hour at the top of their lungs so they can hear themselves pray. They're going to be loud, we're going to be louder. And this went on for about a year and a half. And then there was a sting on the club. The club owner was arrested. I never found out why. And the town, the city came to the church and said, "Would you like this as your new church building? We'll just give it to you." And they said, "Yeah, we'll take it. We've been praying for that place to come down for a while." And so they went in, and as they were cleaning it out, they found trap doors. There was a hidden basement, and when they went to the hidden basement, they found these rooms that were kind of like separated, like multiple rooms that were separated either by, I think it was like curtains or things like that. But it's just these, and they were all full of torture devices. So there were being like tens of people that would be there. Some people would be partying up top, and then there would be people below that are doing these things. Did they know that? No, they didn't know that. Did God know that? Yes, God knew that. Did God listen to their prayer because that's something that he wanted to do? Yes, and he brought it down. This happens all the time. We went to Tennessee and I told people this story and I said, listen, we walked around Brazil and we prayed. And I remember this story of when I was working in Atlanta and this church was praying for us 24 hours. And I'm putting all these things together. I'm saying, you need to walk around community nights. And I went to a church in Collegedale and I said, where is a place in Chattanooga that you know? And they said, oh, we know this one exit that has a shady motel, an adult store, and a truck stop right on the same street. I said, perfect, let's go there. So we went there. There's the shady motel across the street. There's a big truck stop with some stores in the front that had a restaurant, an adult store, and then there were some abandoned houses. And we walked around to that whole place. And I'm like, hey, don't assume that these houses are abandoned. And what are we talking about? Well, they're all boarded up. I said, well, let's step into the grass. We found some needles. We found some bullet casings. Okay, it's not abandoned, right? People are using this. Come on. Abandoned is the perfect place for stuff to happen. So pray for this place too. So these ladies, by the way, I don't know why. Why are like 90% of prayer warriors women? Anyway, it's a question for another time. Anyway, these ladies, they decided that they were going to commit themselves to praying. And it was like 5 or 6 of them. And they prayed, and 6 months later, I get a call. And they were like, Alex, you won't believe what happened. It's like, we've been praying for 6 months, and that adult store closed down, and those boarded up houses were all demolished. And I was like, that's not surprising. I'm pretty sure God had wanted that, but there was nobody asking for it. Nobody was asking for it. And it's like, how would you know that it existed if you hadn't been walking and praying? You would have never known that those boarded up houses were there. You would have never known that. I mean, maybe you pass by the adult club because it's on a main street and you can kind of notice that shady motel, but you really have to spend time walking through your community, getting to know it and building a sensitivity to be like, you know what, there's something wrong with just doesn't feel quite right with this house or this block or this whatever. Like, you guys have been in situations where you're just like, this atmosphere is very different from other atmospheres that I find comfortable. You know, you guys ever walked into a place and you're just kind of like, something's not right here. Anybody? Okay, I'm just talking to myself here. Anyway, they you build that sensitivity. It takes time, right? Not everybody starts with that, but that's why you need to spend time praying. The more time you pray, the more time you spend looking and asking God, show me, the more he's able to do that. And this is where I want people to start, because you're not going to understand practical spiritual warfare until you begin praying. God is not going to show you things that you don't see, and God's not going to do things in places you don't see until you pray for the places you don't see. All right. And let's just take some war tactics here. Okay. If I'm going against, and I've used this example before, if I'm going against a stronghold, am I going to take my swordsman to attack the wall? Is that a good idea? I'm going to take all my swordsmen. I'm going to have them take their stainless steel 440 stainless steel swords that bend, and I'm going to have them whack at rocks. Does that sound like a good idea? No. Here's the problem. The church primarily produces swordsmen. We want to fight the entire battle with swordsmen. Oh, let's do more evangelism. Let's just, medical evangelism. A swordsman is this. A swordsman is a person that does one-on-one warfare. Medical evangelism, personal evangelism, Bible studies, preaching. It's that face-to-face confrontation that is close, right? It's close combat, right? It's not praying for some other country or whatever. Those are ballistic missiles. You know what I'm talking about? All right. The thing is, we're producing that you need swordsmen. You cannot win a battle without swordsmen. So I'm not diminishing the rule of swordsmen or spearmen or close quarters combat. It's just that's all we're producing. You can't, like, we're warring against strongholds here, and we're like, well, why is it not effective? Because you're using swordsmen against the wall. Okay, well, what about prayer warriors? Okay, the prayer warriors are long distance warfare, but they're still within sight, because I'm of the opinion that you don't pray for what you don't see. You should pray for what you see, because then your prayers are specific, and God wants specificity, both in your confession of your sins. Oh, Lord, I've sinned. Oh, no, that's not good enough. You need to know what they are, and you need to confess them one by one. Lord, I just want to pray that you feed all the children in Africa. No, that's not how it works. I'm sorry. Like, you need to get up off your butt and you go there and you feed them. But if you're going to pray for something, you're going to pray for specifics. Like, say, brother Bob, right? Brother Bob needs prayer. You pray for Brother Bob. You don't pray, oh, Lord, I just bless the church. Oh, the young people are far away. Just be with the young people. Like, that's not specific. I don't know how God is supposed to answer that. All right. The devil's going to be like, well, that was a very ambiguous prayer. I'm not sure you can act on that, God. Right? Not that Satan knows your prayers, but there's boundaries in warfare. Okay. So God needs to know, it's like, well, no, Alex has asked me for Bob. I'm going to Bob. Okay. So you need specificity. So archers is what I would call prayer warriors, right? They're marksmen. You don't just spray and pray, because if you're an archer, you're shooting one at a time. You're not a machine gun. So you got to be accurate. So you need accuracy. But will you take an archer against a stronghold? No, you don't take an archer against a stronghold. What do you do? What do you do against a stronghold? Anybody know? Anybody heard of trebuchet? No, catapult. You guys know what a catapult is, right? All right, catapult. Okay, the trebuchet is the granddaddy of the catapult, right? It's super tall. It has a massive counterweight, and it pulls a rock on a rope. And then once the counterweight drops, it pulls this thing and then like launches it, and it goes like 10 times further than the catapult. Catapult just goes, bang, right? Trebuchet is big guy. The reason that I mention this is very easy. Number one, trebuchets don't move. Trebuchets require multiple people. And trebuchets are only effective if they hit the same part of the wall every time. You don't pepper a wall. If you're going to get together like that church, you need people praying constantly, launching stones constantly. You need people that are going to do it consistently. In groups, right? You don't just, not just one person praying. This is people uniting their prayers together, asking God to accomplish something on their behalf, continuously, persevering. And they're only praying for a specific thing. They're not spraying and praying. They're saying, Lord, we want the walls of trafficking to come down in this community, in this place, on our block. And they did it for a year and a half until God answers. That's a trebuchet. That's how you bring down strongholds. The 6 months worth of praying that the ladies did, that's a trebuchet. Now they can take that trebuchet down and move it somewhere else. You don't stop until the prayer is answered. You don't like, oh, you know what, I'm going to pray for this today and that tomorrow and that. That's not how prayer works. You find a cause, you find a need, and you bring people together who you say that we're going to lift our petitions to God continuously on this particular thing till it's accomplished. And you don't get up or move on until it is. You as an individual are a swordsman and an archer, but there are some things too big for you. And you need a group of people to unite together to do it. So you need to find, I always walk in pairs. Yes, when I don't have any other options, I walk alone. But we always walk in groups. I mean, even Jesus sent out his disciples 2 by 2. He didn't send them out alone, right? If anything, if two of you agree on anything on earth, it's going to be done in heaven. And since it's a spiritual war, right, we need it to be done in a spiritual realm. So we need it to be resolved in the spiritual realm first, just like the prayers of Daniel were being resolved in Michael's and Gabriel's battle with the Prince of Persia. It had to be resolved in the spiritual realm first before the Prince of Persia could invade Babylon and fulfill prophecy. The battle had to be won first on the spiritual front before it could be made manifest on the physical front. And so if we're going to wage war, even though nobody sees it and nobody understands it and nobody can make sense of it, and we look like fools to the rest of the world, the two who pray are more powerful than the 2,000 who don't. Because the two who pray are moving things in the spiritual realm, while the 2,000 are just baking cookies. Okay? Like that's I'm sorry, that's just the way things work. It's prayer that moves the hand of God, and the last time I remember, it's the hand of God that moves the world. So if you want to move the world, you better start asking God to move it for you. And not just some, oh, you know, Lord, I tried for a week and I didn't see any results. Like, no, that's not the way that it works. I'm just going to tell you, you're going to be disappointed. That's why prayer ministry is the hardest ministry, because it's the most humbling ministry. And it receives the least praise of any other ministry. Nobody sees it. There's no announcements. There's no pictures. Like, you can't Instagram your prayer life. You can't do it. I'm sorry. You can Instagram your building of a church. You can Instagram your cooking classes. You can Instagram all of your other ministries. You can Instagram a pretty picture of you preaching. Oh, look at that perfect pose. I look convincing. Like, you can't do that with your prayer life. There's no Instagramming. Your eyes are closed and your hands are together. You don't even have an extra hand to take the picture. Oh, we're gonna keep it together. Not that that's how you should pray, because I don't pray that way, but that you get what I'm saying. Like, this is not. Go to your closet, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. The hardest part of prayer ministry is also the war with self, because self wants to be recognized. But answered prayer does not happen to the recognized person, at least worldwide. Answered prayer happens to the person that God recognizes, not the world. And this is one of the most powerful quotes that I'm still trying to understand. Powerful is the man. Listen to me. Powerful is the man who speaks to men on behalf of God. But more powerful is the man who speaks to God on behalf of men. Did you catch that? Powerful is the man who speaks to men on behalf of God, preacher, teacher, evangelist. More powerful is the man who speaks to God on behalf of men. Prayer warriors. You can speak to 1,000 people and convince 10. Or you can speak to God and have him do something that you can never do. This problem I want you to understand, just the way that I started in Afghanistan and the way that I started in South Sudan, I was confronting wall after wall after wall. I came to the States. I thought I was making progress. Then I found out things like, part of this blue campaign, found out cops, once again, I have no problem with cops. I love cops. We were working together. We had lots of cops that were on our side, but there were corrupt cops too. There were bad cops that were part of these things. There were corrupt officials that were part of these things. Politicians, there were corrupt businesses that were part of these things. There was everywhere you look, you felt like somebody was in on it in every aspect of society. And you're kind of like, how am I going to fight against this? And in human wisdom and in human power, you can't. So give up. No, don't give up. Pray. Pray and work. Do what you can in whatever sphere of influence you have with what little you know and with what little you're capable of. But then pray for the things that are too big for you and bring people together to pray for the things that are too big for you. And I like prayer walking. Why? Because number one, I'm ADD. Like I'm just an ADD person. You get me to sit down there and pray, I'm going to start thinking about other things or fall asleep. I struggle. I'm just being honest with you. That's just I've got some problems. Okay, praise the Lord that He can still use me despite those. But um, I walk, and all of a sudden I'm walking with God. And for me, I've always wondered, what does it mean to walk with God? Well, I started by learning how to actually walk and keep my mind on Him. Here's one of the things that a misconception about prayer ministry, that you pray all the time. Well, here's the misconception about prayer, that prayer is talking all the time. Prayer is not talking all the time. It isn't. You can be in God's presence without saying things. God wants you to abide with Him 24/7. That doesn't mean you talk to Him 24/7. Quite frankly, He'd probably get tired of you. You need to listen to His voice too. Remember, walking denotes relationship. And there's periods in relationship where you're both quiet. There's periods in relationship with one talks. There's periods in relationship with both talk. But the idea of relationship is just proximity, not always conversation. That we relate in more ways than just with our mouths, right? Or do you guys just relate through talking? That you can be with somebody and just like being with them. And so prayer ministry doesn't mean when I walk down the street, I'm praying all the time. It means that I've prayed to begin with, and now I've asked God to walk with me as I go in a spirit of prayer wherever I go. I said, Lord, give me this territory. I'm going to be walking through this place in the next few minutes. I want you to reveal to me what you want me to see about it. If there's some personal or specific prayer request that you want me to pray for, reveal that to me in this place. And I'm going to walk around it because I want you to take it as yours. And here's the reason why. Job. Jesus asks Job, where are you coming from? Oh, sorry, Jesus asks Satan, where are you coming from in the book of Job? And Satan says, well, from walking up and down my territory. Walking over one's territory denotes what it is. Animals walk up and down their territory and they spray the boundaries, and they constantly walk their territory to let other beasts know that this is mine, don't come into my territory. And they know when another walks or crosses the line into their territory, right? This is common. This is just, I'm giving you a very vulgar example. But if you knew, ooh, these headphones are killing me. Abraham also walked up and down his territory. And if you look at the children of Israel, the way that they walked around the land under Joshua, not just Jericho, but they actually had them walk up north, then west, then south, then east. They basically did a complete walk around the land before God gave it to them. If you look at the direction in which they conquered all of Joshua's battles, it's in all four cardinal directions. He goes to the northernmost point and he fights. He goes to the southernmost point and he fights. He goes to the westernmost point and he fights. And he goes to the easternmost point and he fights. You'll find multiple aspects within the scriptures of walking the territory you wish to claim. Now, there's a spiritual aspect to that. God cannot give you a territory that you're not in, because God needs a representative within a place for it to be a legitimate claim to that place. That's why when Satan said, I'm coming from my territory, walking up and down it, Jesus was able to say, but wait a second, is it fully your territory? Have you considered my servant Job? He's not your territory, and yet you claim he's within your territory. He's my territory. And so Satan says, well, the only reason he's your territory is because you paid him, right? You bought him off. And God says, okay, you can test as to whether he's a legitimate stronghold in your territory or not. And so Satan does, and he fails. And what is the very first thing that God asks Job to do after he talks to him? Pray. Pray. Pray for your friends. Pray for yourself. And he gives him everything back and more. When we are like, if I'm going to go, and I'm just going to go back to Cold War here. If I want to go be a spy against the Russians, am I going to Google, or am I going to go to Russia, pretend to be a Russian, and try to find out from the ground what are the bases that we should attack? It's just easier. I'm just going to use Google Maps here, and I'm going to see if I can find from a satellite. Oh, that looks suspicious. Yep. I would advise the United States military to go ahead and send a Scud. Bomb that place. Did you check it out? Google Maps checked it out. Yep. Like, would I make a very good intelligence officer if that's the way that I gathered intelligence? Hardly the case, right? What do I have to do? I have to go there. I have to be on the ground. That the problem is we always ask God to pray for our communities. Why? Because we're afraid to engage in them. So how about you get off your butt, get out of your chair, start walking around your community, and start praying for it. Spend more time in your community, and maybe your neighbor will walk out and be like, I see you walking here all the time. What are you doing? It's not just exercise. You seem to be walking with intent. Because when you walk and pray, you don't look like you're exercising. You look suspicious. And that's a good thing, right? Because you are suspicious. You're a spy. You're spying out the land. You're one of those 12, and hopefully the faithful too, that gets sent and says, this is a good land. God can take it for us. You're not one of the 10 that basically says, oh, you know what? Too much junk going around here. Looks hopeless to me. Might as well go to another place. No. God has promised you where you're at. You spy out the land and you say, Lord, this looks like a land ripe for conquest. But I cannot win this battle. You can send the hornets and the bees before me to clear out the land. God actually wanted to go before the children of Israel and clear out the land of the wicked people. And he didn't actually intend for them to fight, but because of their unfaithfulness, they had to do that. Just look at Jericho, right? Jericho, they did nothing. They walked around it. They prayed for it. It came down. And then what do? They had an Achan in the camp and they lost their subsequent battle. Right? Because somebody got greedy to take spoils from a battle that they didn't fight. And this is what we still do today. God fights our battles for us. And what do? We reap all the benefits and all the credit and all the praise ourselves. And God's like, I can't win with you anymore. I can't win with you anymore. And so this is why prayer ministry is powerful, because it brings no credit upon yourself. It brings no fame to yourself. Nobody will know what you're doing. And so it's humbling. And I'll be honest with you, the humble person is the most powerful person. The humble person is the most powerful person. Moses was probably one of the most powerful people in history. He's changed history. Our modern systems of law are based off of Moses's law. Right? Most of the things that we have that are any level of civilized come from him. It was one of the first to have written language, right? That any common person could read, like an alphabet, not just pictures and stuff like that. Like so many developments that came out of Moses. And you know what? God says to Aaron and to Miriam, yes, I talk to you, but to Moses I speak face to face. Why? Because he's the humblest man alive. Imagine having a relationship with God face to face because of humility. God can't show himself to prideful people. God can't reveal himself to prideful people. And so this ministry is important, not because it only brings down strongholds that nobody else can touch, but it also brings down the strongholds within your own life that you're struggling with. Prayer ministry is a humbling and dependent, God dependent ministry. It's like, Lord, I'm asking you to do, recognizing that I can't, but knowing that this is something that you want to do. No glory in it for myself. There's no glory in prayer ministry. And we can learn about counter trafficking ministry, but I hate that I have to say I want you to take my word for it, but I want you to take my word for it. Start with this, please, or at the very least, let intercessory ministry of this type accompany you as you go towards learning about what's going on in the world and advocating and being part of organizations and all this kind of stuff, because this is what's going to ground you. This is what's going to continue to reveal to you what you need to know and what you need to see within its proper context, framed in the view of the great controversy. It is a spiritual war, and it's the spiritual things that have the real effect that trickle down into the physical world. Right? Your physical world does your efforts there do very little. They're good. Praise the Lord for them, but they do very little. Okay? We want to ask God, we want to give permission to God to do things by being present as ambassadors within enemy territory, asking God to be present so that he has the right to step into that territory. Take your light, go to the darkness, right? God needs permission because God, as you said, Michi, he is not a God of force. He's a God that waits. What is he waiting for? People to call on him. Call me in your time of trouble and I will answer. It says that the eyes of the Lord are searching to and fro in all the earth, seeking on behalf of whom he can be strong. God wants to be strong for weak people. This is a quick story. There was a man he loved hunting. He loved hunting, and he was just walking through the forest in England one day. This is like 200 some years ago. He's walking through the forest of England, and he heard the trumpet, little bugle, and the baying of the hounds. And they were, look, oh, there's a hunt going nearby. The traditional English, nobility on horses and that whole deal. And he heard that he heard the commotion, that they were coming very near. And all of a sudden, he saw a baby fawn, right? Baby deer. And it was running towards him. And it pranced a few moments and it crashed into a bush. And then the hounds were getting closer and it came out of the bush and it ran towards him and it shoved its head in between his legs. Out of desperation, the fawn shoved its head in between his legs. And he said that immediately, as its weakness appealed to his strength, he picked it up and he started kicking at all of the hounds. And he said, all of the hounds in the world would not touch this deer as long as its weakness appealed to my strength. He says, how much more when we are being chased by the hounds of hell, run into the hands of Almighty God. And he picks us up as our weakness appeals to his strength. And nothing in his arms is able to touch us as long as we stay there. God is searching on behalf of whom he can be strong. That's what he's like. And even in our wickedness, we have a sense of that ourselves. That's why we hate to see weakness taken advantage of. You know, if I'm walking down the street and I see some guy getting beat up, it's not going to elicit as much of a response out of me unless I see a kid being beat up. I'm going to jump on it quick, right? I might question, oh, maybe that guy deserves it, right? I'll be like, I don't know if I want to get caught up in this. I see a kid getting beat up. I don't ask myself questions. I don't have time to. I jump in there and I just apologize later. Someone's getting beat up by me, or at least I get beat up to protect that kid. I don't know, whatever. I may not be the stronger party, but I'm doing something about it. When I see weakness, and I think all of you can relate to that to a certain extent, when you see something weak, you don't just sit there. You feel motivated to do something, and that's from God. Praise the Lord that we still have, because it says that He put an enmity, right? He planted that in us so that at the very least we could recognize that God's signature is still there. Though weak, it's still there. And so, you know, we need to learn to appeal to God's strength to do things for us. We need to recognize our own weakness, our own inability to reach levels 3, 4, and 5 of trafficking or slavery. The only way that you were going to touch any of those 3, 4, and 5s, and I touched 3, 4, and 5 not because I touched them, but because I asked God to touch them for me. And God has. And I have experiences where God brought ex-Satanists that used to be part of these rituals and things like that to the church, right? Personal friends, through prayer ministry that I didn't even know I was praying for them. But God is merciful, and I'm not saying that I understand the full battle and how things happen, but God weaves our stories together with other people that we're oftentimes just surprised about how that works. But I just want to open it up here real quick. We have 15 minutes. Questions, comments, clarifications. Is it obscure what type of ministry I'm asking you to be a part of here? No. I'm not asking you to be part of my ministry or do things my way. I'm just saying, if you're going to look at how to be effective, you can volunteer, you can spend your time, you can read and do documentaries and all that kinds of stuff, but please accompany it by being present, by being prayerful, by being with an intentional mind of interceding. And don't make this, because one of the things that I hate the most, is just a massive pet peeve of mine, is competition between ministries. You guys have all seen this. Competition between ministries. It's like, is Jesus divided? You know, it's kind of like, no, we're going to save more people than you are. You know, it's like, what? Like, God forgive us. This is why, the only people that I've never seen compete with each other are people who pray together. My prayer is gonna reach more people than yours. No, it's not how it works. Like, it's only because we are uniting in prayer that anything is accomplished. Right? This is not like my ministry ideas are better than your ministry ideas, or my organization's better than your organization, or my preaching's better than your preaching. This is nonsense. Nonsense. God uses everybody. Just let's save as many people as let's be used to be save as many people as we possibly can, because we need to go home. Like, quit this nonsense. So, and where did this come from? I'm trying to remember.
That was spirit led. That was spirit led, my brother.
Okay, so
that's where that came from.
Anyways, any questions, comments on that? You mentioned that you've seen a lot of darkness throughout your ministry. How do you handle traumatic things that you see? That's a very good question. Not very well at the beginning stages. I went through severe bouts of depression in my early ministry. I did. I wanted to give up multiple times. You see things that you're not supposed to. You see things that happen to people that we were not created for, and it's hard. And I didn't have a prayer ministry back then per se. Like, I prayed. We all pray, right? Jesus, thank you for the food. Thank you for this day. Be with me. It's all supplication. We always ask for things. We're good at making Jesus a celestial Santa Claus. But the the real prayer ministry doesn't come in asking for things. The only thing you ask in real prayer ministry is for God's presence so that you could be more like him and near him. That's the only thing you ask for. God supplies the things that you need for. Yes, when you do specific intercession, when you see a problem, you pray for that. But it it's like more often than not we make prayer a laundry list, and but when we are just close to God, he banishes the night. If you're in the presence of light, if you're in the presence of him with whom is no darkness at all, he banishes the night. In New Jerusalem, it says that there is no night there because God is the light of it. And if you just maintain your abiding relationship, and I know that's hard, it's easy to say, abiding is the hardest thing for people who are prone to wander. Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love. Take my heart, oh, take and seal it, right? This is our tendency is to rebel. It's not to abide. Our feet don't abide in the house. We always want to leave the house. But to the extent that we're able to abide in the house, to the extent that darkness has no power over us. It's literally not any more complicated than that, though it's not easy. It's easy for me to say, but I know that that's what we struggle with. And so learning to build that abiding relationship, and I will say that a large part of it is God changing your heart, but a good part of it is also just some discipline, right? There are things that you can do yourself to keep bad things from your life, like stop listening to those things, stop looking at those things, stop eating those things, and stop putting in yourself in a situation where you respond to certain things by going to certain places you shouldn't be going, or meeting with people you shouldn't be meeting with, or doing activities you shouldn't be doing. There are things that you can do to keep yourself from responding to a traumatic experience in a negative way by removing not the triggers, because the triggers are very hard sometimes to remove, and but at the very least identify them so you know what your triggers lead you to do. You have a process of behaviors that you go down when something happens, right? When something happens that you can't deal with, right? You all of a sudden you have your go-to. Everybody knows what a go-to is. You've got your list of a few go-tos, like, you know, uh, everybody likes to escape to something except God, right? We'll escape to anybody else or anything else but God when we should be escaping to God. And so you recognize that in yourself. Recognize your tendency to escape to other things, track those things, and realize, okay, well, how do I remove or mitigate my responses to that so that I'm less likely to go to those things and more likely to go to God? You can do that. It's helpful, but obviously, the more time you spend in actually doing prayer ministry, I think you're not. I don't think you're going to confront darkness so heavy that you can't handle it with a bit more prayer. some some of the darkest things that we experienced in Brazil, because we had spent so much time praying beforehand, our only response to it was just praying again. We had nowhere else to go, right? As Peter says, where else shall I go? Right? You have the words of life. And as long as we recognize that we have no other options, no other escape, um, then Jesus becomes our escape. And it's easier to do if you're already doing it. It's harder to do if you're not doing it. So be patient with yourself, give it time, say, Lord, I just want to spend time with you. Don't ask for any. I would recommend, by starting, if you're not there, starting with just trying to know him. Don't ask him for any of your needs for 3 months. Take 3 months and say, Lord, all I want, all I need is you. I want to be close to you. I want to know you. I want to know that you're with me. Just search the scriptures, pray through it. Just keep yourself close. Sing songs, memorize text, whatever you need to do. Just don't ask for anything. Don't ask for anything, and let me see how that transforms your prayer life. Um, Any other questions
Wait,
or yeah?
wait. I think I'm a little stuck
Okay, go
with
for it.
that. No, just the last part. Don't ask anything.
Yeah, we always pray for, like, God says very clearly, I know what you have need of. I know what you have need of. If you accept me as your father, what father wouldn't give you what you need of without you asking? Like my daughter, like I dress her, I give her food. She doesn't have to come beg me. I mean, there's times where she wants a snack, but I know to give her breakfast. I know to give her lunch. I know to give her dinner. I know to clothe her, right? Like I'm looking to do things. God 100 times more. And what I mean by not asking is like, um, take time. Well, you can still pray for other people, but don't pray for yourself. Stop, like, I got this test, or Lord, I'd really like, just to get that job, or you know all of us are always asking questions like, what am I supposed to do with my life? Well, be like me. uh, God doesn't care if you're a doctor, if you're a teacher, if you're a plumber or whatever. God wants you to be like him. And so if you're not doing what he's revealed to you, he's not going to reveal to you anything beyond that. So everybody's looking for some secret revelation of like, God, I want you to do this. I want you to show me this. I want you to blah, blah, blah. Give me a sign for, like, just put all that on the table. Put that on the shelf. And for take a dedicated time and say, all I want is to be like the psalmist David. My one desire is to dwell in your temple, to inquire in it, and to behold the beauty of the Lord all the days of my life. That's what I want. Lord, I just want to be with you. And I know that if I'm near you, I don't have to worry about my problems. My problems begin to kind of melt into insignificance. Because oftentimes all we do is focus on our problems, even in our prayers. We focus on our needs, even in our prayers. And God is like, I'm enough. So if you spend time with me, and if you just draw close to me, and if you're like me, then you don't have to worry about all those problems. You'll find that vast majority of them will cease being problems without you even asking about them. That's more or less. Is that clear? A little bit? Okay. You were okay. I'm probably missing. Okay. Let me go back here a little bit. Some practical tips to focus on God during a prayer walk. Yeah, one time I in Iceland, I had to take a group of people. I had 1 week to teach them about spiritual warfare and prayer walking. I was like, this is not going to work. So I had one day where I said, you're not going to intercede for anything, nothing. You're not going to pray for those buildings. You're not going to pray whatever. I want you to spend 6 hours walking, and all I want you to do is keep your mind on God. And I said, I'm going to give you Psalm 91. If you can memorize Psalm 91 just by walking with it, don't just back and forth, just, wrestle with each verse. And then if you get tired, okay, don't think about it anymore. Just be quiet for a while, or sing a song, or something. But I want you to spend this entire time just with God. And I gave them one verse, and that's it. Don't go anywhere else. Just stay here. And they did. And afterwards, one girl came up to me and says, you know what? I've never done that before. I've never felt so close to God in my entire life. I never knew that I could do that. Says it's not that complicated. We're just training ourselves to keep our mind on Christ. And there's multiple ways to do that. Sing hymns, memorize a verse, but meditate on it. Reason with God through the verse. I'll go through a verse and I'll read it backwards. I'll parse it. I was like, Lord, like, how are you speaking to me? How does this intersect with my life? Am I the person in this verse, or how do you deal with people like this? Or like, I don't just memorize it word for word. I make it a conversation between me and God, and I make it a legit conversation. So that's one way. I'm running out of time. I got 3 minutes here. Are there legislative or advocacy efforts that can help reduce ST? What's that? What's ST? Not sure what ST is.
Sex trafficking.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Um, we 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 say we do CSEC, uh, commercial sexual exploitation. Oh, CSE, and then CSEC is of children. That you have seen applied in other countries that can be replicated. Yes, a good example would be, I believe it was Sweden or Finland. Um, I forgot. you might have to look at that. But they went the opposite direction of the Netherlands, which obviously you guys know the Netherlands has the red light district. It's very well known, and they've made a legal area for prostitution, and they've literally regretted that because now um, that number three, that organized crime has become basically a competitor to the government. It's that big and that bad. It's impossible to deal with. So I don't remember. I remember reading about it a number of years ago, but it was a pretty good model in terms of kind of like a governmental model. One of the best that exists in terms of something that is that high. So you may want to look at that. It's either Sweden or Finland. I forget. Um, but I'm not an expert in that. My friend, she's a lawyer. She'll probably have better ideas of certain models that might work better in that regards. I apologize. You mentioned you worked in South Sudan. I missed part at the start. I live in Kenya, which is neighboring country. That's where I was living at the time. I just went to South Sudan for a while. I hear that Kenya is a transit spot for trade. Just wondering what I can do. Kenya is a transit spot for trade. Um, Kenya is also extremely high tourist. And so you'll have in Mombasa. So if you're from Kenya, Mombasa, if you're not from Kenya, I'm sorry, Mombasa is just one of the most big touristy areas. It's on the beach, it's on the Kenyan coast. Mombasa is huge for sex tourism for foreign women, right? A lot of foreign women, a lot of students female students will go from universities and things like that. And there's huge male prostitution in Mombasa. There's also child trafficking, of course. One of the things that I was working against in Kenya was FGM, female generation of women, and they practice that among some of the more traditional tribes. So the Maasai and some other tribes, they still do that, and because it's outlawed by the Kenyan government, they do it secretly, which means that they can't do it in a hospital. So they'll use very rudimentary tools. Some places I've even heard in rare cases they've used glass to cut or the tops of cans after they've been removed, and just very anyway. They do this with 12-year-old girls that are about to go through puberty. And so, if you know anything about female genital mutilation, there's multiple types, but the one that is practiced among some of the more traditional tribes in Kenya are very oppressive. Very oppressive. They basically sew the entire labia together, and they just leave enough for anyway. They completely cut off the sensory organ, and it's pretty gruesome. There's other forms that are not as invasive, like in the Arab countries and whatnot, but I know that there it's pretty rough. And then also there's also within Nairobi and Narok and some other places, there's some pretty big hubs for tourism because of all the people coming into the Masai Mara and the Serengeti in Tanzania and Mount oh dear, I can't believe I forgot the name of the mountain. Mount Kenya.
Kilimanjaro.
Kilimanjaro. Thank you. So yeah, there's tons of places to do something. I was working on building an orphanage for girls escaping from female genital mutilation. That's kind of what I was living there, what I was doing when I was living there. In terms of outreach, man, we probably have to just have a personal conversation, pray some, and you have to give me a little bit more context of where you are and whatnot. But I don't mind doing that. I gave what is the name of the orphanage? It didn't have a name. It was under construction at that time, but it was with Maasai Development Projects, and I think they've actually had some issues. They may not even be in existence anymore. Man, it's sad, but sometimes Adventist drama bleeds into the ministry, and it just ruins ministry. But it stuff happens. I don't know if that's true. I've heard some things, but I don't know if it's still in existence. But that was with MDP back. That was 12 years ago, 13 years ago. So if if there's more specific stuff, or we can go deeper into the source with great controversy, the beginnings in Genesis, the structures today, there's so much. It's such a huge problem. It's a global problem, and it's the oldest business too. Slavery is Satan's oldest business. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to learn. So sorry guys, but that's all we can do for today, and I appreciate your time.